every year we have a national security assessment and we have a better idea of what type of adversaries there are out there, what type of bad actors are targeting us, and what they plan on doing. Now, the latest intelligence assessment touches on a number of different issues, including meddling in the upcoming 2020 election, North Korea's objectives when it comes to denuclearization, and also what Iran is doing and could potentially plan to do in the future when it comes to its own uranium enrichment. For the purposes of this conversation, we're gonna focus on meddling in the election and we're gonna talk about North Korea. Now, Dan Coats, who's the director of national intelligence, gave a summary of what their findings were for this year. Take a look.
We currently assess that North Korea will seek to retain its WMD capabilities and is unlikely to completely give up its nuclear weapons and production capabilities because its leaders ultimately view nuclear weapons as critical to regime survival. And while we do not believe Iran is currently undertaking activities we judge necessary to produce a nuclear device, Iranian officials have publicly threatened to push the boundaries of JCPOA restrictions if Iran does not gain the tangible financial benefits it expected from the deal.
So two really important things that he mentioned there. The fact that North Korea has really no incentive to denuclearize. They see their nuclear weapons development as incredibly important to keeping themselves safe, keeping them or using those weapons as a deterrent from US military intervention, what have you. And then the second part of it is Iran. So even though Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, it appears that Iran is still following the terms of that deal. However, remember, the United States imposed sanctions on Iran again. And so if they're being squeezed economically, what incentive do they have to keep following the terms of that deal? Yeah. Now, there are other countries involved and other countries are still supporting Iran because they're still doing the right thing and following that nuclear deal, but who's to say they'll continue doing it? And that's what Dan Coats is trying to say here.
Yeah, I guess the hope is that although we were one of the principal negotiators, one of the principal partners, the idea is, I guess, that maybe the status quo can continue for at least a few years. That little bit of speech that you heard there certainly sounds like an argument for why we should not have pulled out of this very carefully negotiated agreement over the course of a couple of years. I hope that they don't choose to. I mean, it's not to say that they're not engaged in a number of different, foreign military adventures that threaten their security. So they certainly seem to be willing to take risks like that. This would be another thing like that. On North Korea, I think everything he said there makes some sense and is largely what I think we would expect. I do disagree that they see not that they don't see any incentive to denuclearize, but that I think that they should see quite a bit. Like if they were to demilitarize, denuclearize, democratize, join the international community of countries, there would be any number of different advantages. Not just I should say, for the people of North Korea. Obviously that would be significant, but for the leadership as well, because they live far better than the average North Korean, but they still live in horrible circumstances compared to how they could. I'm sure that they have a great deal of fear of what could happen, that they could get locked up or whatever. Is that what America does? Do we really pursue people for the crimes that they've committed in terms of war and genocide and all of that? Very rarely, it seems like.
I know, John, but you think Kim Jong-un would want to democratize? I mean, he's been vicious to the people of North Korea. You democratize, and they're coming for you.
But I'm not making that argument idealistically. I'm making it pragmatically. I think that his situation could actually become far better. He'll have billions of dollars at that point. He'll be an actual billionaire. I think that he would be doing quite well. But I will say, do you remember when Trump initially started these talks?
I do,
and
yes.
He had these very high hopes. He was very bombastic in what he said was going to happen.
I mean, he said that we have nothing to worry about. North Korea has denuclearized. That's what he said on Twitter.
He should tell Dan Coats.
Yeah.
And at the time, we were skeptical of that. And we were attacked.
Oh yeah, I know.
So much, like,
I know.
How dare you say that you don't believe Donald Trump when he says that he's gonna work with this dictator and everything's gonna be okay. I hope that it does, and I think that we should continue diplomacy with them. But the idea that false hopes were gonna make it so last year is insane, and that's why we said what we said.
Yeah, I mean, look, getting attacked is, of course we're gonna get attacked. I don't really care too much about that. But I do think it's important to follow up on these types of stories and see how they develop. And so far, there's no reason to believe that North Korea has denuclearized. In fact, Trump had that one meeting with Kim Jong-un. He's actually planning the second one-on-one meeting. I don't know if it's gonna be one-on-one to be fair, but he's gonna have a second meeting with Kim Jong-un in about a month.
Yeah.
Assuming that everything goes smoothly from now to then.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, one other thing too, on this area, and perhaps only this area, I don't even blame Trump. That's an incredibly difficult situation. One of the most difficult to navigate diplomatic and military situations in the world, I would imagine. If he came into office, 4 years went by and literally no progress had been made, I would not have counted that on the top 50 list of the faults of his presidency.
Look,
but he's making us have to judge him because of his bravado and arrogance.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's not about, hey, Trump is the person who can get North Korea to do this, and if he doesn't succeed, then we're gonna blame him. No, he's the one who escalated tensions with North Korea and engaged in this childish, juvenile exchange on Twitter, calling him Little Rocket Man and talking about how big his button is. I mean, that was what escalated tensions. And then he luckily was convinced that, hey, maybe I should try this whole diplomacy thing. We gave him credit for that. We wanted that. But then he took things way too far. He went from calling him Little Rocket Man to then saying that Kim Jong-un is like this fantastic guy. He went on like a, international tour talking about how great Kim Jong-un is, how they had great chemistry. So,
can I make a really stupid analogy?
Absolutely.
This is really dumb. So he brought up the possibility we're gonna make things right with North Korea. He met with them, and he became fast friends with the dictator. So much so that he received letters praising him, and Republicans were so like, oh my God, diplomacy from Donald Trump, it's amazing. And it reminded me of people who want to get in shape or lose weight. And people who study motivation say, don't go telling people that you're gonna do that or that you are doing that because you can get praise. Like, hey, that's a great idea, you should be doing that. You know what, you do look a little bit healthier. Because the problem is that your incentive to follow through goes away if you're already getting something for the little bit of effort that you've put in. And I feel like to some extent he's done that with this diplomatic situation. He feels like everything's resolved, we're best friends, even though they haven't denuclearized, they're no more economically open than they were last year. The situation is incredibly tense with South Korea. I feel like he already got all the praise he wanted, and praise is all that he wants.
Well, you know what, you bring up a super fascinating point, because for people like us, and I think for most Americans who pay attention to politics in a somewhat objective way, of course we all have our political leanings, you see what's really going down with North Korea, and you see the fact that they haven't actually denuclearized, and you don't see this as a win for Trump. You're just relieved that things haven't escalated to the point where we're engaged in some sort of military action. But when it comes to his supporters and when it comes to his base, and I know this based on recent conversations I've had, they do see Trump as someone who's succeeded in this whole diplomatic approach toward North Korea. Someone that I was speaking to just yesterday was trying to make the case that no, Trump is probably one of the best presidents in US history. And I was like, okay, list the things that you feel Trump did right. And he specifically mentioned the fact that, hey, South Korea and North Korea are talking again. And it's all because of Trump. Now, mind you, they started talking again because of fear that there was going to be an all-out war.
Yeah, but he created that fear, so shouldn't he get the credit?
It's just incredible. So yes, for Trump's base, he has won. And maybe I'm being unfair, maybe I'm overgeneralizing, but to be fair to me, I feel like when it comes to Trump's base, he can do no wrong. Even when he punches them in the face and raises their taxes while giving the wealthy huge tax cuts, they'll be like, yeah, we're winning.
Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.